If you've heard the word AI a million times this year and wondered, what am I supposed to do with this when it comes to my real estate business? You are not alone. And I promise you, we were right there with you not too long ago.
We're agents, we're investors who use tools like Claude and ChatGPT for our everyday business. And we realized it's something we really couldn't ignore.
And today we're going to show you exactly how we use AI in our actual businesses as investors, as agents. We're not going to talk about theory and concepts of what you could do. I think that we've actually used AI to do in our business to save us time and just trying it out.
Anna, let's get right into it. So Anna, talk to us about your Danville story, how you and Brian used AI to convert your single family home into a duplex. I know you mentioned you used some tools to help you read like the 20-year master plan of Danville and how you were able to talk to county council, I believe, on what your plans were to actually do this. How did that work?
Yeah. So Brian and I bought a single family home. It was huge and it didn't make sense as a single family home. It really would make sense as a duplex. So we looked at the zoning and we realized that the property that we purchased was in an area where we could turn it into a duplex, but we needed to get a special use permit, which required us to go through zoning, the zoning board for approval, and then the city council for approval. So we looked up most cities and counties have a development plan. It may have a different name. It may be different spans of time, 20, 30-year development plan. So we pulled the development plan for Danville, and it's pages and pages and pages and pages long, just like lots of documents that we review. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up using ChatGPT specifically. We uploaded that plan. We told ChatGPT exactly what we were trying to do, what we were trying to accomplish, with the conversion to a duplex, that we needed a special use permit, that we had this plan, and we wanted ChatGPT to basically pull points out of that plan that worked with our vision for this property. So that way we could speak to the planning committee and to the city council about how our request for a special use permit would actually benefit them in their plan. And it did exactly that. It basically took hours of work and chopped it down probably into like 20 minutes less. I'm pretty sure it was less than 20 minutes, right? It gave us bulleted points about how our plan actually matched with the city's plan, gave us speaking points that we could use during the city council meeting. And we asked it to give us like exactly even page numbers that we could go back and reference exactly where it was in the plan. Because, we'll talk about this a little bit later, I think, about like the pitfalls of AI, but it's not always accurate. So it's always good to double check the work. But yeah, it cut the time in half and it made our presentation so much better. We've left an amazing impression. Like members of the council actually called us or reached out to us directly to tell us what an amazing job we did with our presentation for the request for the special use permit.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it sounds like you guys used it to help you analyze something more efficiently, right? How long would it take you to read a 120-page master plan for a city in 20 years? So, and I love the way that you prompted it, right? And we're going to talk about this as a theme. We're using our AI tools of how you prompt it, how you were like, hey, please read this. This is our investing strategy. This is how we plan on using it. Give us talking points to when we actually talk to the zoning board and things like that, of how we can make this a win-win for everybody. So that story right there is just one way how it can be really powerful. And we'll talk about a bunch of different ways how you can use it to kind of be complementary of you and your business.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So before we jump into specific tools, I'll let you answer this one, Nico. So why do you think a real estate agent should care about AI right now? And what do you think the risk is for all the agents out there that are just ignoring it and hoping it goes away?
Yeah. So when I read this question, I was like, for the agents listening, how many times have you been dealing with another agent that's like, hey, I've been in the business 25, 30, 40 years, and I've done it one way, and they're stubborn and things like that. And I've always thought you have to learn and adapt. And the agents that are listening that are like, that's too complicated, you're really going to get left behind, because the agents that are using it are finding ways to be more efficient in their business. And we're going to talk about so many different ways that Anna and I are doing it ourselves. But I would say the people that are not doing it, they might fall behind, instead of calling and doing all these certain things that you can be using the AI to help you with. They're falling behind. I don't know. What would you say for those people that are kind of just ignoring it? Think, hey, you know, well, I'll learn that someday.
I think I was actually listening to a training about AI, and they were saying it's just like our grandkids or great grandkids are going to look back and be like, why were they so afraid of AI? Just like we look back at people like when electricity was like first invented, and we're like, why in the world would they be afraid of electricity? Like it is a tool that has made life better. Um, I think what I have personally witnessed is I just those people that are afraid of AI and are staying away from it are still doing a lot of the manual processing. They're still paying like EAs and other people to help them get through this. And the ones that are using AI are just adapting and pivoting so much faster because they have this like unlimited source of information that they can tap into to do pretty much anything, review documents, like do marketing plans, state laws. Like it's amazing the tool, like if you know how to use it. And then in some cases, depending on which tool it is, some tools have, all tools have different functions, but you can actually set some of these tools to like automatically run in the background for you to like go through your inbox, draft responses. It's a huge time saver. So these people have time to go out and actually market themselves and find new clients while others are still like sorting through their inbox and trying to figure out what to post next.
Yeah. And I would say, if you're on, the news or social media, you can't ignore how much headlines are coming from AI, right? Right. The ethical boundaries that you can use with AI and things like that. And we acknowledge there are things that you would want to make sure you put guardrails on, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But those who aren't using it, regardless of real estate, where I know we're a real estate show, but who aren't using it in their businesses and how to make their business run more efficiently, they can definitely get left behind. Their competitors are. So just one thing that, we wanted to kind of talk about from the jump. But I did want to talk specifically and about the agent side. So and we talked about this off camera, how you used it as a tool for, you just mentioned reading documents. And when we're helping clients buy, for example, a condo or that are in HOAs, we get these thick documents, 100, sometimes 200 pages of things. And it's kind of hard for us as agents to really read through it and find the one or two things we're really looking for. But I know you've used AI to, help you scan the documents and things like that. You might talk a little bit how you used it on that agent side.
Yeah, absolutely. So like many agents, I'll go into like specific tool that I use the most probably right now are ChatGPT and Claude. I'm just starting to learn about Claude. I recently like turned Nico onto that.
I love it.
Because they seem like they are the same thing. It's like you hear about Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, and they are similar in like being AI type processors, but they do have different limitations and different strengths. So I will say like ChatGPT is great for treating it like a more like a chat bot, like a Google. It can also do really well with pictures. And then Claude is a little bit more of like a thinking partner, but we'll jump more into that. But specifically with these documents, like if you're an agent, you've gotten a resale package, you're like, oh my God, there's hundreds of pages, multiple file. And I said, there's got to be a faster way to do this. So after we had used ChatGPT to go through the like development plan for our personal investing, I was like, you know what? I probably can upload a resale package into ChatGPT as well. And with all of these tools, honestly, it's trash in, trash out. So really the prompt matters, like what you tell it to do. If you tell it just review these documents, it'll review the documents and it'll give you like generic information of what it pulls from them. So I was very specific. In Virginia, on the Virginia side specifically, there is you can look it up online. I did a Google search and I found like the outline of exactly what needs to be included in a condo association resale package. Like there's, I think, 37 items. And so I uploaded that list and I told ChatGPT, here's a list of required items for a condo resale package. Please review the attachments and make sure all of these items are included. Look for any special assessments, any areas of concern, if there's any rental limitations, if the client chooses to rent the property in the future. Review the financials to see if there's any concerns or flags for the financials. And then I let it go. And that's just kind of a rough like overview of like the prompt that I gave. But I was very specific in what I wanted it to look for, which are like the key things that I think as an agent we care about. And then again, probably like 5-10 minutes later, and I did prompt it to tell me exactly where it found that information in the files so that I could then go back and read it myself instead of combing through pages and pages of stuff. And in this particular case, for one of the stories I can think of, it did pick up on the fact that during meeting minutes, during a condo association meeting or an HOA association meeting, there's a study being done because part of the complex is built in an area that's marine clay. So the foundations are shifting. The ground isn't perfectly stable. And so they're working with the city, with the county, and with the state to kind of put a fund together because they may have to do some additional work to stabilize the foundations. So it didn't directly impact my clients and where they were buying in that particular part of the community, but it flagged something that was part of meeting minutes that we might have missed had ChatGPT not called it out. So in that regard, I was able to tell them like, hey, there's this item. It is an item of concern. It doesn't directly impact you. There's currently no special assessments that are being like put forward for residents to have to pay additional funds. But this is something that you want to keep an eye out in the future. There could be a special assessment in the future. And these are the items to look for in your own property. Like if you start to see these kinds of cracks and things, then you might be one of those properties that's affected by this issue. And they went forward. They were like, we still love the neighborhood. We want to move forward. But they went in knowing that this was a possibility, eyes wide open.
And not only that, right? You look like an expert, right? You're somebody that actually cares, and you're using a tool like right to help you navigate through it. I love how specific you are with your prompts, and it sounded like you did the same thing with Danville. And this is going to be a theme throughout this whole episode. The more specific, the more detailed that you actually go with prompting. Don't just assume anything. Like talk to them like they're 5 years old, and they'll get smarter as you go. Like, what exactly did you prompt on this specific example? Saying, what to look out for? Was there special assessments? What keywords did you use when you were
Yeah.
looking at
So,
that?
yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I had pulled because, like I said, I know in the state of Virginia, each state is different. So I would say Google search and see if you have similar criteria. I found for associations, HOA and condo associations, the state requires certain disclosures be made in the resale package. So I uploaded. I said, here are the specific state required disclosures in a resale package. Please ensure that all of these disclosures are in this package. And then I did ask it to specifically review things that my clients would find important, which would be, are there any limitations on rentals in the future if they choose to rent the property in the future? Please review the financials and let me know if there's any mention of special assessments. If there's any development plan or what's it called? It's not a development plan. My brain is freezing. Like most of these associations have someone come in and do like a 10-year plan that assesses. It's like an engineering company that assesses whether parking lots need to be resurfaced, if there's pools, if the pools need to be relined. I asked it to look to see if there was one of those studies done and if there was any items that were upcoming that would potentially be a special assessment in the future. To just look at the financials to see if there's any concerns from year to year with the financial for the association. If there's any special assessments. And then I think that I knew that they wanted to put up a fence. So I asked if there was any, what the requirements were to make any modifications to the exterior of the property, like putting up a fence. And then I let it go and basically comb through all the documents and pull out the information on its own. So I
Yeah,
don't have an exact prompt, but it was fine.
put you on the spot. But no, every agent that's listening, right? These resale documents, most common with condos, but it's also with HOAs. Like you as an agent, it's really hard to find all these certain things, right? And if you're using this tool and you're able to find a special assessment that's coming next year or 2 years, that's, $10,000 for fixing a driveway because the HOA or the condo association wasn't really organized and not planning for it. That's something 2 years down the road, you might get a call from your client like, what the heck is this? And, your clients should be reading these documents too. And I always encourage you as agents to let them know, but not everybody reads the terms and agreement whenever things come around. So it's just one specific tool when you're an agent working with clients that can be very helpful. But I know you used AI also to review like insurance policies. Most agents don't touch on insurance policies. So how does that work? And, why did you do it to make your business better?
Yeah. So let me go back to I remembered for the condo and HOA packages, I also ask it to review and make sure that there's no violations because you can have condo and HOA violations as well. So I
Mhm.
asked to make sure there were no violations. And the other thing I asked it for was to pull out any fees that buyers would be required to pay, because in a lot of these, especially like condo associations and HOAs, there's like an amount of money that's supposed to be paid in initially. So I just thought about those things,
Mhm.
like the agent to consider like violations and additional fees that they may not be expecting, but that the HOA or condo association asked them to pay in when they first move. So as far as insurance policies, I will say it started out on the investor side through one of our communities that Nico and I are both a part of. And so when we're doing, at least from the investor side, when we're looking at a renter's insurance policy, you get all the details. And sometimes it's confusing. It's written in legalese and
Okay.
insurance speak. And so what I have done with it is I will take the policy, upload it into a tool like ChatGPT. If I want to do a little bit more strategic thinking, I'll use Claude, and then I just ask it to review this insurance policy. I tell it what the property is, like it's a single family home, 4 bedroom, 4 bath, near the beach, 3 blocks away from the beach. Here's the address. Just give it specifics about the property, what state it's in. And then I ask it to review the insurance policy and to give me a list of the strengths and the weaknesses or the blind spots in the insurance policy that we may want to look at, and provide recommendations on those weak spots of what might be a better option on the insurance plan. And ChatGPT will do it like this. Like, it'll spit it out, and then you can look and you'd be like, oh, I didn't realize I was missing flood insurance here. Or like the deductible here is really high or really low. Let me see if I can bump it up a little bit. That might save me cost because I'm not worried about this here. So that's one way I've used it on the investor side. And so now when I've worked with investors as an agent, I recommend to them and I give them an idea of the prompts. Some of these prompts I have I've typed them out and I've saved them for later, and you can adjust them as needed depending on your property or location. But then I have clients and I say, hey, if you are comfortable with it, I recommend plugging this into like ChatGPT and using this type of prompt and having it explain to you as a landlord, like the landlord policy, what you're missing, where there's a blind spot, and just kind of educating them on how they can also use it as a tool to review these complex documents.
Exactly. Like there's a theme on the first three stories we talk about, right? These complex documents, especially insurance things, I think they're worded like that on purpose so that you don't second guess it, right? But I think our mentor, Chad Carson, gave us this tip about plugging it in, reviewing it, and talking about your blind spots, right? You might be covered for one thing, but not covered for another thing. You mentioned like being in a flood zone or being near something like hailstorms or things like that, and you're not specifically covered. So the way you prompt it is like, hey, what are some things, some blind spots that this insurance policy doesn't include? And be very specific so that you have it in bullet point form and you can actually talk to the insurance agent to say, hey, is this accurate? And it could start the conversation. Maybe you could save a couple hundred, maybe $1,000 on your insurance policy because they're adding things that you don't think are technically necessary. But I did want to talk about a story specifically about insurance because
Yep.
it's actually still going on so this isn't on my agent side or investor side, it's a personal side. And unfortunately, a burst pipe happened in my grandmother's house and she wasn't there. We found out maybe a couple of days later. We walked in and, oh man, it was a mess. Like I wasn't personally there, but I saw pictures and the floors, it was in the winter time when everything was freezing. The pipes, I guess, were not as insulated as they should have been. It's a really old home. And long story short, we got an insurance. We put in an insurance claim and they were offering, it took a while. As you know, anything with insurance takes a while, but they were offering, I believe, $12,000. And my dad, who is a contractor, was like, that's not even going to cover half of it. So after some negotiation and things like that, my dad's old school. He doesn't use any tools. He's reading this policy. He's like, how do I dispute like line item 1, 2, 3? The package that they gave us regarding the insurance claim was like 50 pages. So I said, Pops, let me review it. Let me see if I can use some of my tools to help me. So kind of like what Anna was talking about, I plugged it in. I said, hey, based off of, what the scope of work is, I think it was closer to like $50,000 for all the work. What are some things that this is missing? I uploaded some pictures. I said, use this specific area based on materials and labor. And it came with a great like summary, maybe like a 5-page document that we ended up sending back to the insurance company. And after some back and forth, and they had to come back and re-inspect it. As of yesterday, we got $9,300 more from the insurance company just by doing that extra step. So somebody that gets something like that and they just accept it, right? Or I think my dad was working through that for like 2 weeks before he actually came to me. It was like, Nico, like, I might need your help. Like, how do we read this kind of thing? And
Right.
I was like, you should have came to me 2 weeks. Anyway, just one more way that you can use the tool to help you analyze something, whether it's an insurance claim, whether it's an insurance policy, to help. And it made it really organized. I liked how I used Claude for this specific one. I said, and it took a little bit of time. I think it took like 10 minutes. There's like a little tab where you can make it more adaptive, and it actually really analyzes. And so I was very specific of what our goals were. Again, using like pricing and labor based off of the actual market. And it was a very clean proposal that we sent back, like countered. Now we didn't get everything right we wanted, but my grandma and my mom were very happy that we were able to get more than what they initially did. So it's one of those things you can use to push back on, things like insurance claims.
Yeah, I love that because it's funny. You were like, it took a little bit of time. It took like 10
It
minutes.
took like 10 minutes,
You literally just said your dad spent 2 weeks trying to
maybe
just
more.
figure out this document, and you were able to knock it out in 10 minutes. And I guess that's the part that like blows my mind now that I understand how to use it better. Because initially, you type in a basic prompt and you're like, review this, and it gives you crap. And then you're
Mhm.
trying to fight with it to get the product that you need. But like once you realize, like you get uber specific, like what exactly do I need? And some prompts, like I'm not even kidding, like some prompts can be like a page long,
Yeah.
but they are like the best prop possible. And then it spits out the best product possible. And it is 100 times better and still faster than the 2 weeks that it took your dad to try to noodle through it before he gave it to you. So we talked a lot about documents kind of like on both sides of the house. So I want to pivot a little bit now and ask you, Nico, like I know you use AI a lot in your communications. I've seen it like some of your social media stuff. And so I want you to share with the audience, like, what are you doing with it for communication purposes, like on the agent side with client emails, with tenant outreach, I guess landlord verification. A lot of this is how are you using it for communication in general across your
Yeah.
business on both sides?
Where do I begin? I realized English was never my favorite subject going in school. I was more of a math guy. So I realized sometimes there was typos or things that weren't grammatically correct. So when I'm doing things like, for example, like emails or communications with other agents, I always run it by, say, hey, can you make this sound more professional or make this sound more friendly, but also make it sound like me. I don't want it to sound like a robot. I don't want it to sound like I'm using ChatGPT. So there's things that you can do. Actually, I want to kind of rewind this because there was a training. Anna and I both do a lot of AI trainings with our brokerage, kind of learn about it. So one of the first things that they do is have ChatGPT or Claude interview you so they know who you are and they can cater their answers towards you specifically in writing emails and things like that. So maybe you take 10, 15 minutes, say, hey, ask me everything that you need to know about me. Hey, I'm an agent. Hey, I'm an investor. Hey, I host this awesome podcast with my friend Anna. I'm a local real estate meetup monthly. Everything that you do, how you like to be communicated. Like, hey, would you prefer it to be more direct or would you like stories and things like that? So you do that up front. And again, it might take 10, 15 minutes and tell them to be very detailed about interviewing you. And that's going to set the tone. Make sure they save that. You can ask Claude, okay, save that for all future, whenever you speak to me and whenever I send out emails, I want it to have that tone. So, my AI understands that I'm a friendly guy. I like to communicate. I'm not super direct. And now anytime I'm sending out emails or I'm communicating with people, or even if for example, I also use it as like setting up a nurture campaign for my CRM. So CRM is your customer relations management. If you don't have one, highly encourage it to use one. So I use Bold Trail and I used a template from another training that I was on for a buyer nurture campaign for 12 months. Basically little touch points, text, emails of how you can keep them engaged throughout that journey and things like that. So you're not actively, I encourage you to call them, of course, but the little touch points. But anyway, You use that template, you put it in Claude, and I said, make it sound like me, make it geared towards our market in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, weave in a few statistics depending on the time of the year, little things that you can do to provide value. At the end of the day, that's our job as agents, is to provide value for our clients, for our friends, for our sphere. So I've used that as well. So it's in so many ways, that's a few things that I've done to help me with my agent side.
Yeah. I use it a lot too with the communications as far as like, especially if you have a moment where you're like dealing with an agent that's got you like pissed off or a client that's like got you in a mood. And then you like run it through and right, wrong, or indifferent. Sometimes a Claude or ChatGPT could almost be like the therapist where you're like, hey, this is the situation. This is the email I drafted. This is the mood I'm in, and this is probably not the right mood. Like, can you like tweak this and put this in a more professional tone
Mhm.
or soften it? And it'll come back. And depending on how you program it, may say like, oh, you're completely right. ChatGPT tends to do that. Claude, I programmed it to be a little bit more of, like pushback and kind of give me like no bullshit answers. Like, yes, this was a little rough. You may want to tweak that.
Mhm.
So I really like it for that. And then there was something else. It slipped my mind. I told you earlier how I was using AI for communication. And you were like, oh, that's a good idea. And now I can't remember what it is. Like with my brain stopped working.
While you're thinking about it, one other thing, one other thing that I thought of, buyer and seller guides, right? That's one thing that they always encourage you to provide to somebody that might not be ready, but things that you can do to provide value. So if somebody says, hey, I'm looking to sell my home maybe towards the end of the year. Okay, here's my seller guide. So what I've done is, again, use a template from one that you've maybe done in the past or somebody's buyer guide, and then you cater it to you with your brand, your headshot, all your info. And I used it specifically with Claude because Claude has great presentations. I use ChatGPT for images and things like that, more simple things. But Claude has built me some great buyer seller guides where I can provide that, and it's geared towards me. It tells everything, even weaves in like the Cash Flow Breakfast Club and things like that. So just one thing that I've also thought of.
Yes. Oh, something else that I do, I think this is what I was thinking of is, so when I have someone go under contract, buyers or sellers, I do have like a templated email, like of key dates, like congratulations, you're under contract. And then I have like a list of key dates. And so I have uploaded that into ChatGPT, and then I'll upload a copy of the ratified contract. And I will say, basically fill in this template for me and draft an email so that I can send it to my client. Again, I can't stress enough how AI can make mistakes. So I do go back and I verify the dates real quick, but it's just something that maybe would have taken me 5 or 10 minutes to like push out this email. Now it'll take me like 2 because now I'm like, okay, I'm drafted. Let me look at the dates. Okay, those match up. Perfect. Copy, paste, send. So there's just so many ways. And that's just on the agent side. And then if you are a real estate investor, I've used it in my communications to tenants when I am trying to respond to like maintenance requests. Like I've had tenants that have vacated the property, so I need to respond back to them as far as security deposit and, if it's being returned or if they're deduction. And I've gone in and I've used ChatGPT and Claude, and I tell it, this is the specific state I'm working in. This is the situation. Here's documentation. Here's a copy of the lease. I need to draft an email for this person. Like in one case, it was a tenant that just left. They just like 3 months into the lease, a
Yeah.
12-month lease, they just left. And I uploaded all that information. And I asked Claude to write me an email to respond back to that tenant. And it did. And it gave me like things to look out for, ways to say things. I did tell it again to tell me where it was getting resources from Virginia tenant laws so that I can go look at it and make sure that it's accurate. But I've also used it on the landlord side as far as communications with tenants and things like that. And it's been super helpful in a way that I wouldn't have done on my own, or it would have taken me significantly longer.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Like, hey, sanity check. I know your stories with tenants and things like that. So you can easily write a text message as soon as it comes in, but
Mhm.
giving it to your second brain, which we like to think AI is, and do it like, hey, is this an appropriate response? Or, hey, is there a way that I can be firm and friendly at the same time? So make sure that you're doing that kind of as an extension for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I
So
also,
all I say, it makes things faster.
yeah,
That's
But I also like the point that you mentioned, like when you're using it as a template and double checking, right? And making sure that that's actually pretty accurate. Cause I also use it for like quarterly posts for like my social media or things like that. And I'm very specific. I'm saying, hey, use only GCAR and MR stats because you can go on Zillow, Redfin, or things, whatever. You can go on any headlines and then you can find whichever data. So again, what you put in is what you get out. So especially if you're putting out like market stats or things like that, you will really want to make sure trying to provide value, giving accurate info. And GCAR, which is my association, provides things like that. And then I just bring it in and I say, hey, can you cater this to me? Maybe put my headshot and then repurpose it. So just little things like that. And then lastly, and I know we're rambling about this, but I like using ChatGPT for, you mentioned when you get under contract and things like that. Again, social media is huge for Anna and I. So, hey, my buyers went under contract. This is the address. We competed against multiple offers and we were able to win. So can you make me an image that I can post on Facebook or Instagram that will, it's concise, it's clean, and that's going to provide value to my audience to know that I'm an agent that can win against multiple offers. So little things like, and I use that all the time. So if you see any of my posts, definitely review it as well. Sometimes my face looks a little warped. So I'm like, all right, redo that and use this headshot or something. So I encourage you guys that are agents to dabble with it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think we're going to pivot a little bit now because you and I have talked about this. And so at one point you had mentioned using AI to stress test like a fix and flip deal. And so how, Nico, have you used it? Like, just do you want to explain to everyone like how you use AI to help stress test the deal?
Yeah. So I think a few episodes ago, we talked about calculators and online calculators that you can use. We talked about rule of thumbs of things that you can use to stress test if a deal is a deal. But the story that I actually want to talk about is on the agent side. So I am working with a client that has a home that they inherited. It's in pretty bad shape and need a good amount of work to get to the ARV, to get to market value. And he came to me, he said, hey, Nico, I know you work with investors. We kind of just want to know what it looks like if we sold it as a cash offer versus what is sold at, what would it sell as if we maybe did a little cleaning up, rehabbing and get it ready for the market. So I had a great conversation with them probably for an hour or two, just kind of understanding what their needs were. And I told them, hey, I have a great community of investors. So I'm going to run it by them. I also am going to put it in, I would call it my AI calculator, where I plugged it in. I said, hey, I showed some pictures. I took some pictures and I said, what would it look like for a rehab budget for an investor that is looking to get this to market value? I provided what I thought was the ARV based on comps. I also plugged in the comps. So I said, hey, comp one, comp two, comp three. These are all the comps that comparable sales, recent sales on a home. I gave like a desired flip profit. So I put like $50,000 is what a investor at least would like to make. Every investor is a little bit different. And then I was very specific. I was like, okay, this has an unfinished basement. What would it look like if they added a bedroom, a full bathroom down here based on this market's material and labor costs? And this one I used Claude and I said, hey, make two documents. Make one, a spreadsheet for rehab costs. Make it realistic. Don't do the high end. Don't do the low end, the median, the ones that I can give to the seller and say, hey, this is what an investor would most likely give you. And then also give another spreadsheet of what it looks like if we maybe cleaned it up and emptied it out. There was a lot of stuff. There still is a lot of stuff. And what it would look like if we just cleaned it and put it on the market as is. So the goal is, anytime you're working with a seller, for example, in my case, or if you're an investor looking to buy a property, obviously you want to find out what the seller's needs are, right? I talked about my property that I bought. The guy was in foreclosure and he needed to sell it quickly. So in that case, the cash offer is the best. Well, in this case, they might be more okay with waiting a little bit of time, seeing what the market says. There might be a little bit of uncertainty, but the end of the day, us as agents, us as investors as well, is to give solutions, right? So I loved how I used AI to make a clean, presentable thing that made sense, like the feedback I got was, oh, okay, this makes sense. Like this breakdown for, you could tell somebody, hey, this was 100K rehab. They're like, I can get this done for 40,000 tops. And you're like, okay, our kitchen itself is easily 20,000, bathrooms,
Mhm.
flooring, painting, cleaning out. So when you break it all down like that, I think it helps me with a little bit of credibility, a little bit of a sanity check for the sellers that are like, okay, that this all actually makes sense. I might not do it and I might just, do the cleanup route, but our goal as agents is to give options and to help them get from A to B. So it was just one thing that I thought of, and I'm going to continue when I'm trying to buy more, use this kind of template to help the sellers understand why our offer is the way it is. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I ramble. Nothing to add to that, right? Have you used it for any of your fix and flips or fix and burrs?
I have not used it specifically for cost estimating. This is one of those things that we were just starting to dabble into AI when we did the duplex of the 20-year plan, development plan. So I didn't even, at that point, I'm not gonna lie, which was like a year ago, I didn't even like think about how AI can help with cost estimating and
Mhm.
reviewing like contractor estimates. So I admit I didn't, but when we do our next project, I can guarantee you that we will.
Of course. I mean, as you can tell, these are things that Anna and I are learning as we kind of go. And we talk like twice a week, and we're always like, oh, you should do this. Hey, you should do this. You should prompt it like this. So little things like that. And anybody who's listening, like, reach out to us and see, like, hey, what prompts are you using for, doing your market update post? Reach out to us because we love it and we're still learning and we're trying to, provide value for anybody who's listening.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And it's always evolving, like as things, because all of these companies are adding on and making things better, and there's more and more functionality that becomes available every day. So this is not like you learn it once and you're done. It's just like anything, right? It's evolving. So we have to keep evolving with it because if not,
Yeah.
we're still going to get left behind.
So Anna, we talked about like AI and ChatGPT, Claude kind of
Mhm.
being like our second brain, right? So
Uh-huh.
I know both of us have used it actually for like our podcast prep and things like that, role playing and making faster decisions. You mind talking a little bit about that? Like how I know we gave a few examples, but like using it as an extension of you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. So I don't know that we mentioned this earlier. So I mean, we've talked about Claude and Chat GPT. We both use them. There are free versions that you can use to kind of test things out. I will say just like anything, like the free version gets you only so far. So I do pay the $20 a month for both Claude and for Chat GPT. And like we were mentioning before with Chat GPT, what I have personally found is I like Chat GPT for like graphics, like Nico was saying, to use it more as like a Google or like a chat bot that I can get some like basic information from and flesh some things out. Because with Chat GPT, at least what I have discovered to this point is like it doesn't necessarily have a limit on how much you can do in Chat GPT as far as like data processing wise. Whereas Claude, I feel like Claude is a lot more of a think partner. I feel like Claude is a lot more of a set, like you can actually program it to be like a no kidding second brain. You can program it to actually do things automatically for you, like review your inbox, sort things out, things like that. And that one does have limits. Like you have time limits or like tokens is what they call
Mhm.
them on Claude. So I'm going off the rails a little bit just for people because I know they'll be like, are you using the free version? Are you using the paid version? What do you use this for? What do you use that for?
Yeah.
So I'm very careful with what I use Claude for now that I know how to use it a little bit better because I kept running into like, oh, you run out of tokens or you run out of time. You have to wait. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't run out for a whole month, but it makes you wait a couple of hours and then you can go back and start working again. And then once you hit that wall. So now I'm like, okay, when I really want to be strategic and do things like that require like deep thought, I use Claude and I'm very strategic with how I use it. So I don't hit those limits as quick. And
Yeah.
then I use ChatGPT for graphics and things that are probably a little bit simpler on that side.
Yeah. I'm so glad you
Wow.
mentioned that because I also do run into that. Like when I'm
Mhm.
doing something very analytical, like you're trying to really do that and you're asking questions and things like that. There is a limit, right? So, and then it says, hey, check back in 3 hours, 4 hours. I'm sure you can do like a extended paid version. But both of these have free versions. I was initially using ChatGPT, the free version for some image creations, maybe virtually staging a vacant property. I've done that before. But again, there's also limits. So we both use the paid version. I think one of the first or second tiers of each one. So think of that when you're deciding on which way you want to go.
Yeah. And if you're really going to use it and integrate it into your business, personally, I think the cost is worth it. Like with Claude, at some point I may bump up to the next level if I can get it set up like the way that I want to, where it's actually doing behind the scenes things that maybe a VA would do for me, like clean out the inbox or keep track of, like almost be like a virtual transaction coordinator. They do have the ability. That's like a 401 level course on Claude. We're not quite there yet. We're still figuring it out. But as far as second brain goes, I mean, we use it all the time. Like when Nico and I were, a couple months ago, we met with the person that does our editing for the podcast, and he was making suggestions on how we might be able to tailor the podcast a little bit better for agents specifically, because that's why we started in the first place. So I was telling Nico, I went into Claude and I said, this is the podcast. This is the intent. This is our goal. Our goal was to get this many listeners over the course of the next 12 months. Our goal is to help these types of like audience members, our avatar that you hear people always talk about. And I wanted it to be a think partner with me in how to strategically put that together, like lay out a plan for the next 12 months for Nico and I to be able to grow the podcast and to tell it who our ideal listener is, and to help us develop a list of pain points and how we can tailor those pain points into episodes that will help you guys as much as possible. And it spit out this, I mean, Nico knows, like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4-page document outlining everything. And it was like, I would never have been able to produce that, first of all, to that level, because I am not a marketing person, but it's been a fantastic tool that we've now been able to go back and reference. So like Claude will spit out these outlines or documents or this roadmap, and then you can actually like feed it back in and put that document into Claude and say, kind of save it there and use this as your like reference guide for what we're doing for the podcast. And we use it all the time to help us put together a lot of the scripts and the pain points and kind of figure out how we can best serve you as our audience. And I do the same thing on the marketing side for my agent business. I use it as a marketing and branding expert, and it helps me put together this beautifully tailored spreadsheet that I have for the month, where I plan out content for the month. And I'm not having to pay a social media manager like hundreds of dollars a month to do that for me. I'm paying right now $20 a month for Claude to help me with all of those things.
Yeah. And things that you're going to use regardless, right? It kind of, it minimizes the thinking that you have to do to help you move forward. But I know we talked kind of not surface level, because we do use it in adaptive ways, but Claude specifically, I know that you can use it for skills and coding and things like that. We're not going to go too deep into it. But one thing that I do, especially if you're doing certain things a few times. So in my example, I'm like, I do CMAs all the time, right? So one little tip that I've done is, when I'm doing a CMA, and CMA is a comparative market analysis, all the realtors probably know already, but once you're doing that and you're doing it through Claude and you're done and you have a great, presentation for a client, say, hey, Claude, use this as a template, as a skill that I'm going to be doing in the future. So save all the steps that I just did, checking out the pictures of comparable sales, days on market, what the area looks like, everything that you do to make a CMA. Remember this as a skill that I'm going to use in the future. So it could save you time. Say, you can just plug in an address. Hey, I want to do a CMA, cater it with all my branding info. So in the future, you can use it to kind of save time. So it's smart like that. You can, instead of doing it repetitive, the goal is to not repeat doing things that you're going to be doing all the time. So you want to run your business as efficiently as possible. And I think that's just one cool way. Again, Anna and I are still learning. We're doing courses of ways that we can maybe dive a little bit deeper. Sure. I really think these tools have helped us. But I know we're getting close on time, and I know we promised them in the beginning, everyday tools. What can somebody do today, an agent that's listening? I think listing descriptions, social media, we talked a little bit about that, but what is like one or two things that somebody that's listening that they can do to put AI, ChatGPT, Claude in their own business?
Yeah. Honestly, the first thing I would tell someone to do, like, and spend, even if it's just 30 minutes on, is train your AI. Pick your poison, whether you want to try Claude first or you want to try ChatGPT first. Pick one, stick with it, and then train it to at least understand your voice. Like Nico said earlier, you could tell, like, either one, Claude or ChatGPT, that you want it to learn your voice and you want it to interview. Ask me 100 questions or pick whatever number of questions. Ask me as many questions as you need to understand. Actually, I take that back. You want to be specific. Don't say however many questions you need to. I would put like a number on there. Ask me 50 questions. I think I've heard in a training someone said, I told Claude or ChatGPT to ask me 100 questions. If you're not sure exactly how to do that, the next best thing is YouTube University. I would go to YouTube and I would say, how do I train ChatGPT or how do I train Claude to learn my voice? So when it does spit out these listing presentations or these listing descriptions, it actually sounds like you. So I would say first step for me would be to tell someone to try to go and train it. Go watch a quick YouTube video on the best way to train whichever model you're using to speak in your voice, and then spend the time to do that up front to set it up.
Yeah. And start learning. You mentioned YouTube University, right? There's so many courses that you can do. Real estate agents, AI, real estate agents, Claude, for beginners or things like that. I love that tip because that's one way that both of us honestly got our foot in the door. It's like, oh, did you know you can do this? Oh, did you know you can do this? So just kind of familiarizing yourself. And the good thing is nowadays, everybody has a phone. You can get that app on your phone and but one time I went to a listing appointment and then right after I talked to Claude. I was like, hey, this is what I saw. This is, the points. I talked to it for maybe like at least 5 minutes of everything that went on in that listing appointment. I said, put this in bullet points so that I can upload it to my CRM. So being nowadays, we're so digital, everything is online. Making sure that you're using this for the best as your agent business, as your investor business, ways that you can implement efficiently. But speaking specifically on AI, right? We want to make sure that there's some guardrails, right? You can really get out of hand. What are some things that AI can get wrong? What are you doing to kind of minimize that, I guess?
I guess I've talked about it. Like you said earlier, you tell your AI to specifically go after certain market data or to use certain stats from like GCAR, I would say NVAR. So I think if you ask very generic, especially if you're asking generic questions, it'll give you generic answers that it pulls from like different sources. And not all of them are necessarily reputable. So I would say like statistics are really important to take a look at and make sure you understand where they're coming from, because sometimes it may even pull old statistics. Like you may be looking for 2025 stats, but then it doesn't know that because you didn't tell it that. So it pulls like 2023 stats because that's the first thing it came across. So I would think like numbers and statistics, it definitely gets wrong. Sometimes it does misinterpret some things, especially when it's in legalese, at least what I have found. So that's why I'm very conscientious of asking it to tell me what the source of the information is. If it's a document, I ask it to specifically point to what page and section it's referring to, where it got that information. If I'm asking it to go online and pull information like market stats, I will ask it to specifically provide the website where it pulled that market statistic information from. And I think I've found Claude, it seems to work a little bit better when I try to do it with ChatGPT. Sometimes it'll pull stats and I'll click on the website and the website doesn't go anywhere. And I'm like, what is happening? Because sometimes I think I forgot what they call it. It's like AI fever or like it makes shit up.
In the best
And it
intentions.
does.
But one thing that I thought of, and then this is going to be super specific, when I was an AI noob, I'm still kind of a newbie learning, but when I was crafting like, hey, can you make a professional friendly email to this tenant or to this listing agent? And I copied and pasted, the top would say, hey, here's a professional and friendly message. And then at the bottom, it'll say, is this good? So making sure before you actually hit send, just, something that I thought of when I was like, oh, shoot. As soon as I sent that, I was like, oh, all right, double check. So there's going to be a theme of this whole episode is use it as a tool, but double check everything before you actually promote it online or send out emails.
Yeah. Because it does have like dashes in weird places. It adds emojis sometimes. Or this is part of what I go back to as far as programming your AI is understanding what you like to see, how you speak. So like my AI knows I use emojis sparingly. So I said, don't put any emojis, don't put dashes. Don't sound like you can actually tell AI, don't sound like AI. Do not use keywords that AI would typically use that make things sound like AI. And surprisingly, it can like pull this list of like, oh, okay, like AI typically sounds like this. So I'm not going to sound like that. So this is part of where I think data guardrails, you have to understand and review it all the time. And then there's other little things like that with your email or like dashes in weird places that if you train it correctly, you can kind of train some of those like mistakes out of it. But still double check the data for sure.
I guess you don't use emojis. I'm an emoji guy, but I also do tell it like, hey, this is a text message. Don't make it worded like an email. So being super specific. Hey, this is my goal. Anytime we're prompting, I think it's very important the way you prompt. So many trainings on how you prompt your AI, but hey, this is a text message. I want it to sound friendly. I want it concise, one paragraph or less, ideally 2 sentences on your goal. And that way it spits it out the way you want it.
Yeah, exactly. When I do a prompt, I think in my head, I generally am thinking like, okay, what is my goal for what is my goal for this particular message? Who am I speaking to? What's the timeline? And then I add in any like specific details about, like you were saying, if it's a text message, if it's a post that I want to repurpose for LinkedIn versus Facebook, because it's a little bit different. So it's almost like smart goals. Like if you've ever heard about those for yourself, I kind of think of it when I'm creating a prompt. It's not just a blanket like sentence. It's like really digging in and being like, okay, why am I doing this? What is my intent? What is my goal? What's the timeline? What's the end result? Like, how do I know I was successful, like with whatever spits out the other end? And if you give it those specific things, like some of the results come out fantastic. Like it's pretty amazing.
So we're already on the final rapid questions. What's like one surprising thing that AI has done for you that you never really expected?
Oh, gosh, there's so much. Actually, I guess it's surprising and it hasn't quite done it for me yet because I'm working on it. I'm figuring out how to set it up. But I know I told you about this, that I'm actually taking an AI course right now because why not? And it's going to be when I can send up to actually go through my inbox. I know some people are a little squirrely about like security and stuff, but to be honest, I work for the government. Like there's probably like 5 copies somewhere overseas at this point because my data has been filled everywhere. But I like you can set up, this is specifically in Claude, like essentially AI agents to go into my inbox, be able to sort through my email, categorize important ones, not important ones, draft responses. And then at the beginning of the day, when I log into my Claude and in my inbox, it'll essentially say, these are the emails that are urgent and that you need to address. These are the ones I have questions about. I've drafted up some responses. And I'm so excited to figure out how to get that up and running. So I never thought, like a year ago, like I was saying, I was just throwing in like information and saying, analyze this. But I didn't realize how much more it can do, from reviewing cost estimates from contractors in detail and insurance policies all the way to like managing my inbox for me. And
Yeah,
it's only going to get better.
it's only going to get better and it's amazing. So those of you who are listening who haven't really used it yet, I encourage you to check it out, maybe do a training, reach out to either one of us and we can tell you how we're doing it and how we're prompting our AI to help us with our businesses. But that is going to do it for another episode. Please like, share, subscribe. If you found any value, I think this was a fun episode. This will probably be on another episode talking about AI because I'm sure in a month or 2 or 3, we're going to be like, oh, did you know you can do this? I feel like Ann and I are talking all the time about ways that we've been using it in our business. So if there's a way that you're using it in your business, please send us a comment, DM us. You can reach out to me at N Garcia Official on all social platforms, and you can reach out to Anna at.
And I'm Anna _realtor on all social platforms as well. And along with, I would love to hear how you're using it. And I'm a forever student. So if you come across any trainings that you've taken that were like awesome, because like everything else, social media is in your face constantly. Everybody's trying to sell you a course. And some of them are better than others. I'm not gonna lie. So I would love to know if you like took an AI course that completely like blew it out of the water and has like put your business light years ahead.
100%. Let us know. All right, guys. Well, tune in until the next episode.
All right. Bye.
See ya.